Did you know that Alexandre Dumas, the famous author, one of the leading authors of the French Romantic movement in Paris, who wrote the Three Musketeers and the Count of Monte Cristo, also wrote a werewolf novel? Yeah, I didn't know that either. One of 3 fantasy novels, which included a vampire novel and a retold version of The Nutcracker, Dumas's werewolf novel at that time was considered one of the first werewolf novels ever written. That's cool, right? He wrote it in Brussels between the years 1852 and 1854, but it was finally published in 1857 in 3 different volumes. Dumas reprinted in his journal Le Monte Cristo in 1860. And well, Dumas had said he wrote his werewolf novel based off a legend he heard from where he was from in the town of Villers-Cotterêts when he was a child. It was a tale recounted from his father's friend named Monte. His recount of how he came upon the tale he wrote in his introduction.
I ask myself, during those first 20 years of my literary life, from 1827 to 1847, did I so rarely turn my eyes and thoughts towards the little town where I was born, towards the woods amid which it lies embowered, and the villages that cluster round it? I am now going to tell you the story of Thibaut and his wolves, and of the Lord of Vay. And how, you will ask, did I become acquainted with the events which I am now about to bring before you? I will tell you. Have you read my memoirs, and do you remember one, by name Moquet, who was a friend of my father's? If you have read them, you will have some vague recollection of this personage. If you have not read them, you will not remember anything about him at all. In either case, then, it is of the first importance that I should bring Moquet clearly before your mind's eye. Perhaps you will ask me why, having heard it so long ago, I have not told it before. I can only answer you by saying it has remained hidden away in a drawer of my memory, which has remained closed ever since, and which I only opened again 3 days ago. I would tell you what induced me to do this, but you might, I fear, find the recital somewhat tedious, and as it would take time, I prefer starting at once upon my tale. I say my tale. I ought perhaps to call it Moquet's tale, but, upon my word, when you have been sitting on an egg for 38 years, you may be excused for coming to believe at last that you've laid it yourself.
Okay, so this story he was told by his father's friend ended up being his 26-chapter werewolf novel called The Wolf Leader, about this guy named Thibaut who wanders the woods after being beaten for supposedly interfering with a hunt, and thus while in the woods he meets a wolf who is standing on his hind legs, walking around like a human being. Well, this human-like wolf offers him and makes an agreement with him, like wishes, but only if Thibaut can give the wolf a strand of his hair for each wish. It also involved Thibaut being in control of a pack of possessed wolves with red eyes. Most critics of that day and even recent reviewers didn't like the story. One reviewer from the 1950s said the wolf story was the drabbest hack work Dumas had ever done. However, another reviewer had said The Wolf Leader was a considerably superior from a literary point of view. For me though, it really was a true tale about evil, and a tale that is a fresh of breath air, since it's not in the style of today's werewolf stories. It kind of reminded me, and probably was a version of the Faustian bargain or deal with the devil retelling, and I think Dumas did a good job with it for his only werewolf tale. That's interesting to say the least. I'm not going to tell you what happens next in the story, but I will leave you with a snippet from my favorite part of the story and links down below to where the story is.
Thibaut seized a hatchet which was within reach, and in order to give a fit reception to his strange visitor, and to terrify him, he flourished the weapon above his head. A curious mocking expression passed over the face of the wolf, and then it began to laugh. It was the first time that Thibaut had ever heard a wolf laugh. He had often heard tell that wolves barked like dogs, but never that they laughed like human beings. And what a laugh it was! If a man had laughed such a laugh, Thibaut would verily and indeed have been scared out of his wits. He brought his lifted arm down again, "By my lord of the cloven foot," said the wolf, in a full and sonorous voice, "you are a fine fellow. At your request, I send you the finest buck from His Royal Highness's forests, and in return, you want to split my head open with your hatchet. Human gratitude is worthy to rank with that of wolves." On hearing a voice exactly like his own coming forth from a beast's mouth, Thibaut's knees began to shake under him, and the hatchet fell out of his hand. "Now then," continued the wolf, "let us be sensible and talk together like two good friends. Yesterday you wanted the Baron's buck, and I led it myself into your shed, and for fear it should escape, I tied it up myself to the rack. And for all this you take your hatchet to me. How should I know who you were?" asked Thibaut. "I see, you did not recognize me. A nice sort of excuse to give. Well, I ask you, was it likely I should take you for a friend under that ugly coat?" "Ugly coat, indeed," said the wolf, licking his fur with a long tongue as red as blood. "Confound you, you are hard to please. However, it's not a matter of my coat. What I want to know is, are you willing to make me some return for the service I have done you?" "Certainly," said the shoemaker, feeling rather uncomfortable. "But I ought to know what your demands are. What is it? What do you want? Speak. First of all, and above all things, I should like a glass of water, for those confounded dogs have run me until I am out of breath."
If you like this quick trivia blog post and you want to see more content involving my work in progress during the Blue Hour, follow, like, and share. But first, let's start a dialogue. Did you know about Alexandre Dumas's Wolf Leader? What werewolf legends do you know? I want to know, so let me know in the comments below.